Hello, welcome to our budget countdown. I'm Parikshit Luthra. It's the eve of the budget session of Parliament. Ahead of this, Union Minister Prahlad Joshi convened an all-party meeting to discuss issues that may be raised during the session. 37 leaders from 27 parties participated in the meeting. The Chief Economic Advisor will table the economic survey tomorrow. Finance Minister will present the Union Budget a day later on Wednesday. This year's survey will have the full stamp of CEA Anant Nageshwaran. He had taken charge just a day before last year's survey, which was mainly penned by the current member of the Economic Advisory Council, Sanjeev Sanyal. It will also be the first detailed commentary on the economy by North Bloc since the war in Ukraine began. Sapna Das is here with the hits and misses of the previous economic survey.
The 2023 economic survey comes at a time when the world is vastly different from the projections made in the previous survey, thanks to the war in Ukraine. The survey had projected India to grow by 8 to 8.5%. This was based on a set of assumptions like orderly withdrawal of liquidity by central banks, oil prices at $70 to $75 a barrel, easing global supply chain disruptions, among others. 1 year later, and after the war in Ukraine, India's growth projections stand revised downwards by 1 to 1.5%. Oil prices currently range between $80 to $85 a barrel after having surged to 115 levels last year. Global inflation has spiked and central banks have aggressively raised interest rates. Plus, global supply chains have been battered, particularly for food grains and fertilizers. The one critical element but the survey projection may still stand is the inflation outlook. The survey had warned on India needing to be wary on a possible surge in global inflation, especially due to high energy prices. As compared to 5.6% CPI in December 2021, inflation currently stands at 5.72%, thanks to continuous rate hikes by the RBI to cool prices, which has yielded results. The survey also noted a current account deficit of up to 3% is tolerable for the economy. Today, the current account deficit has surged to a 9-year high at 4.4% of the GDP, while forex reserves are lower from the peak by around $70 billion as of December 2022. In the CA's own words, a 7% growth handle for this year is very good, as the world is facing a poly crisis. Uncertainty is the unknown unknown, and there are a lot of unknowns right now. We should be prepared for unexpected events and not be adventuristic. With this backdrop, it may just be possible that the FY24 growth could be projected between 6 to 7% in the 2023 survey.
And the new tax regime was rolled out 3 years ago, but since then it has found less than 500,000 takers, or 10% of the taxpayers. Even the former Revenue Secretary Tarun Bajaj has said the new tax regime needs a complete overhaul. There is a big expectation that the government will revise tax slabs and try to make the new tax regime more attractive in the budget. Kanishka Sarkar is here with the details. Kanishka, why have there been only few takers?
In 2020, FMN announced optional new tax regime for individual taxpayers. Most experts say that 3 years on, there are hardly any takers, especially among those who earn above 10 lakh rupees. According to reports, less than 5 lakh people have opted for the new regime. Before we get to why, here's a quick recap of what the new tax regime is. It's supposed to be a simpler one that offers lower tax rates under 7 income slabs, but with no deductions and exemptions like the old one. The scheme offers lower tax rates with peak rate applicable to income of more than 15 lakh rupees. Here are the key differences. The new tax regime has 7 tax slabs and lower tax rates in the sub 15 lakh rupees range and no exemptions and deductions. Under the old regime, you had 3 slabs, exemptions like HRA, LTA, standard deduction, also deductions like PPF, ELSS and health insurance premium. Now, despite the lower tax rates, why haven't too many people chosen it over the old regime? Well, for one, there is no clear benefit of lower tax outflow with the new regime. People earning up to 15 lakh rupees can pay less tax with exemptions in the old regime. The old regime has lower tax flow with all the deductions as compared to the new policy. Also, the new regime does not provide deductions for social security savings. Experts say that the new tax regime must be incentivized in Budget 2023. One recommendation is to raise the tax slab to account for inflation, raise threshold from 2.5 lakh rupees, allow limited deductions on health insurance or housing, revise tax slab upwards, and do away with tax deductions. Let's see how and whether the Finance Minister will announce measures to make the new tax regime more attractive.
Right. And of course, there is a big expectation that this budget will be dedicated to the middle class and there will be certain tax exemptions there for the middle class. Let's see what happens in Budget 2023. Moving on to the agricultural sector. 1,200 lakh metric tons of wheat and paddy. That was the procurement target Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman set for the government in Budget 2022. The plan, estimated to cost the exchequer over 2 lakh crore rupees, was to benefit 163 lakh farmers. CNBC-TV18 Santya Gora reports that a little over 70% of this procurement target has been met so far. But experts believe the next 2 months may see the government catch up.
India's wheat production took a bit of a hit in 2022 and came in below early estimates, mainly because of a heat wave that swept through key wheat farming regions of Punjab, Western UP and Haryana. Farmers in Madhya Pradesh say they escaped mainly because of an early harvest. This lower than expected production, along with high export prices due to the global shortage fueled by Russia's invasion of Ukraine, threw India's wheat farmers a lifeline. But this meant that farmers chose to not sell to the government, whose minimum support price of 2015 rupees per quintal was lower than market prices.
बाजार में भी तेज भाव चल रही है तो बाजार में ही देंगे ज्यादातर किसान जहाँ तेज भाव मिलेगा वहीं पर देंगे
भाव नहीं रहा तो कहाँ से खरीदेंगे अब जाके व्यापारी खरीद रहे हैं.
In 2021-22, against production of 109 million metric tons of wheat, the government procured 43.3 million metric tons. But in 22-23, against a production of 105 million metric tons, the government managed to procure just 18.7 million metric tons as of January. Since then, in an effort to ensure enough wheat for domestic consumption and rein in prices for the Indian consumer, the government has banned the export of wheat and wheat flour. The government also temporarily banned the export of broken rice and imposed 20% export duty on non-basmati rice to ensure domestic supply. This also meant that paddy procurement by the government has been better. Paddy farmers in Maharashtra's Paint say many of them opted to sell to the government at the MSP of 2,040 rupees per quintal since it was higher than private prices.
गवर्नमेंट का जो भाव है 2040 क्विंटल प्रति क्विंटल है, लेकिन हम लोग अगर प्राइवेट में जाएंगे तो 1400 1500 ज़्यादा से ज़्यादा 1800 दे देंगे, तो हम लोग गवर्नमेंट को देते हैं.
प्राइवेट में जैसे रेट कम मिल रहा है इसलिए मैं गवर्नमेंट में बेचता हूँ. प्राइवेट में 15 रुपये केजी से भाव मिल रहा है और 20 रुपये केजी से गवर्नमेंट दे रहा है, तो हम उसके पास गया है और उसको दे दिया, गवर्नमेंट को दे दिया.
So against production of 166 million metric tons in 2022-23, the government has procured 67 million metric tons as of January 2023. But this is still lower than 2021-22 numbers, where against a production of 179 million metric tons, the government procured 86.6 million metric tons. In all, the government has spent around 87,250 crores on wheat and 1.36 lakh crores on paddy so far in FY23. But while the expenditure target in Budget 2022 has been largely met, total quantity has been just 857 lakh tons against a stated target of 1,208 lakh tons. The government said that in 2022, paddy acreage fell by 38 lakh hectares due to less than average rainfall. This was expected to result in overall rice production falling by at least 10 million tons in the crucial Kharif season, which accounts for nearly 80% of India's rice harvest. This would mean that the government would miss its rice procurement target for the year, a problem given falling rice stock in government granaries and increased demand from the government's free rice and grain scheme that has been extended multiple times since the pandemic hit. In addition, experts say the procurement plan may not benefit the budget estimate of 163 lakh farmers, though it will come close.
If we look at the Rabi season and the Kharif season for both wheat and paddy, we see that about 91 lakh farmers have already benefited from the procurement. And by end of March, when more procurement happens for the paddy crop, we expect this number to go to about 150 lakh farmers.
Be that as it may, there are still 2 months to go for the year to end, and the government hopes that by then, it will be able to achieve its procurement target by buying more paddy to make up for the shortfall in wheat. In Maharashtra's paddy-rich region of Pain, Santya Gora.
All right, on that note, let's take a short break. But coming up, a study reveals that senior executives across India can expect an average salary increase of 9% in 2023. More on that when we're back. Moving to a subject linked to the compensation for India's leading CEOs and CXOs. According to a study by Aon, senior executives across India can expect an average salary increase of 9.1% in 2023. The average CEO compensation is expected to increase to 8.4 crores. That's an increase of 21% in the last 4 years. Aon analyzed data across 519 companies from more than 25 industries. To discuss more on this, I'm now joined by Pritish Gandhi, Director and Practice Leader of the Executive Compensation and Governance Practice in India at Aon. Pritish, I'd like to begin by asking you, what were the sectors or the kind of companies where the CEOs, the CXOs, saw the highest increase in compensation?
So we're seeing very high increases in the technology sector. And by technology, I don't mean startups, I mean IT services organizations such as Infosys, TCS, Wipro. So those were the highest increases. We also saw reasonably strong increases in the BFSI sector, particularly in the non-banking financial corporations. And we have also seen healthy increases in conglomerate-owned organizations.
Right. So what was the average variable pay increase or LTI increase that you saw, or the highest levels that you saw?
It's tough to comment on the highest levels, but I'll give you an interesting data point. The average LTI pay for BSE Sensex CEOs is at 10 crores, and that's the highest we have ever seen. And we see the LTI component of pay rising far more quickly than the fixed component for CEOs across India.
Right. Now, coming to the industries that you spoke of, you said that you have seen an increase of about 21% in the salaries of CEOs. I would like to ask you, what was the highest salary that you came across among companies that you surveyed?
The highest salary we came across was about 136 crores. So approximately that was the highest salary we surveyed, and this was for a CEO who was also the promoter of the company.
Could you also give us a sense of, like, for example, you told us that the technology companies, they have seen the highest increase. So could you give us a sense of what were the pay scales like? What were the highest trends there?
So in technology, there is a very interesting phenomena which is happening, that long-term incentives are becoming globally competitive. So what it means is that the base pay in India and US may be different because of different cost of livings, but the long-term incentive pay, whether the person is based in India and US, is moving close to each other. And in that sense, and this is a trend which we see in startups, in IT product organizations, and in IT services organizations. So IT sector or technology sector is the first sector where we see Indian executives largely being paid on par with global executives.
Right. I would also like to ask you about how the global environment right now, the possibility of a recession, slowdown in exports, has also impacted the salaries of CEOs, and what could be the impact possibly in 2023?
Great question. So till now, we haven't seen any tangible impact on projected salary increases for top executives. Although we have seen far more caution in boards. So I would say the sentiment has become cautious, but it is yet to impact the increments of top executives. So we need to monitor it for the next 2 months and see if the sentiment tangibly impacts the increment of top executives.
Thank you very much, Pritish, for joining us with those very interesting highlights and insights into how CEOs and CXOs were paid in the year 2022 and what could impact the salary trends going forward. That's all we have time for on this broadcast. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.